I live a fairly unremarkable life. Same alarm, same breakfast, same narrow hallway that leads from my bedroom to the small bathroom with the cracked tile and the medicine cabinet that sticks when it's humid. I work remotely, mostly staring at spreadsheets and muted conference calls, and on weekends I read. Or try to. Quiet is a luxury I've come to value more than anything else. There was a period, maybe 3 weeks ago, when I started waking up feeling off. Not sick, not exactly. More like the feeling you get when someone calls your name in a dream and you can't tell if it was real or not. That kind of unease you can't put your finger on. It started in the bathroom. I'd be brushing my teeth, going through the motions, not even really looking at myself. Just that blank, slightly puffy face in the mirror every morning. One day, though, I caught a blink that didn't line up. Just slightly delayed, like a dropped frame in a video call. I assumed I just blinked oddly, maybe out of sync with the way my eyes were focusing. I didn't give it much weight. People see things all the time. But once you notice something like that, it gets harder to unsee. A few mornings later, I was shaving. Foam across my jaw, razor in hand. I leaned forward slightly, angling the blade carefully under my chin, and paused. My reflection paused too, but only after a half second of hesitation. The tiniest lag, just enough to trigger a creeping sense of wrongness that started in the gut. It wasn't a big deal. I was tired, and the bathroom light flickers sometimes. I blamed it on that, or maybe on the stress. I hadn't taken time off in almost a year, and the latest work project had me up until 2 a.m. more nights than not. My brain was overloaded. Optical illusions weren't unexpected, but the more I watched, the more I noticed. On a Saturday night, I was getting ready for bed, lights dim, a bit of jazz humming from my laptop speakers. I remember standing at the sink, flossing, eyes barely registering anything beyond the motion. Then I saw it, a smile, not mine. The face in the mirror curved its lips upward while mine stayed perfectly still. I froze, floss dangling from my hand. The reflection returned to neutral, as if nothing had happened, as if I'd imagined it. That was the first time I stepped away from the mirror without finishing my routine. The glitches escalated slowly, which I think made it worse. There wasn't one big, undeniable moment, just a series of tiny fractures in reality that kept stacking. A blink out of rhythm here, a faint twitch in the reflection's hand that mine didn't mirror. Once I scratched my eyebrow and saw no motion in the glass. Just a passive face staring back, half a second too late, catching up like an old video buffering on weak Wi-Fi. I tried filming myself once, holding my phone in one hand while I moved the other slowly in front of the mirror. The footage came out normal, perfectly synced. But watching it back, I couldn't shake the feeling that the recording had caught something else, something I hadn't seen. A shadow behind the reflection that wasn't in my bathroom at all. I deleted the file without finishing it. By the second week, I stopped using the mirror at night. There's something especially unsettling about mirrors in the dark. The way the reflection almost seems to glow against the blackness, as if it's lit from some place other than where you are. I began brushing my teeth in the kitchen sink, muttering rationalizations to myself about broken routines and shifting habits. It didn't help. The reflection didn't need the mirror anymore. I began to notice it in windows, screens, shiny surfaces, glimpses out of the corner of my eye, reflections where none should be, always with the same delayed motion, like it was watching, learning. The scariest part wasn't that it was out of sync. It was how it gradually wasn't. Every day, it seemed more precise, more perfectly calibrated, until the only time it faltered was when I wasn't paying attention. One night, I was brushing my teeth again, back in the bathroom. I don't know why. Maybe I was trying to prove to myself that it was all in my head, that things were fine, that I wasn't going crazy. The mirror was slightly fogged from the shower, but I could still see myself. I watched carefully, every blink, every breath. I furrowed my brow. The reflection copied me. I frowned. It matched. I leaned in, squinting. Then it happened. The reflection lifted its hand, just slightly, and scratched its right cheek. I didn't move, not even an inch, but I saw the fingernails drag across the skin, saw the faint red line left behind. I blinked. It stopped. We were back in sync. I reached up with trembling fingers and touched my own cheek. Smooth. No pain. I turned away from the mirror. My breath had quickened. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum. I tried to dismiss it. It was late. I was overtired. My nerves were shot. Maybe I had moved without realizing it. Maybe it was a trick of the light. I took a few slow, steady breaths, trying to push the thought out of my head. I grabbed my towel, turned off the bathroom light, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke to a faint, sticky sensation on my face. In the mirror, a dried, blood-red scratch marked my cheek, right where the reflection had touched itself. I hadn't felt it, didn't remember it, but there it was, undeniable. I pressed my fingertips to the mark. It stung faintly. Real. The reflection smiled. I wasn't. After the scratch incident, I covered the mirror with an old bedsheet. It was a childish response, like draping a blanket over a monster in the closet. But something about facing it each morning, knowing what had happened and how I couldn't explain it, it gnawed at me. A small defiance, a kind of sanity preservation. The mirror wasn't broken, just hidden like a wound under gauze. But avoidance never solves anything, especially not something like this. The reflection didn't need glass anymore. It started with little things. My expression in storefront windows would shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. I'd be walking past the coffee shop or the gas station and glance into the glass and see myself frowning. Stern, tight-lipped, angry. But inside, I felt nothing of the sort. I'd even stop, double back to check again. The reflection would snap back to neutral the moment I focused, like it had been caught mid-act. More strange moments followed. My reflection was sometimes dressed differently. Subtle at first. A button undone I knew I hadn't touched. A different tie, color on mornings I didn't even wear one. The wrong watch on the wrong wrist. But in the mirror, it fit. As though that version of me had made those choices, and only I was out of sync. I tried to ground myself. Screenshots of my appearance before leaving the apartment. Notes pinned around the house. I even started journaling, just short entries about what I wore, what I felt, who I talked to. I told myself it was mindfulness, therapy adjacent, a way to stay present. But it was fear, the creeping anxiety that I was the unreliable one, that I was the one being mirrored. The next fracture came through my phone. I was scrolling one evening, hoping to drown the unease in videos and noise, when I noticed a string of recent calls in my history. 3 missed, 1 outgoing, a number I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a while before the panic set in. The call was made at 2:47 a.m., a time when I should have been dead asleep. I checked the voicemail box. There was one new message. No words, just breathing. Soft, ragged, too close to the mic. The kind of breath you don't hear unless someone's crouched right behind the phone. I deleted the call log. Then I checked my messages. There were a few texts, all sent in the early hours of the morning. Sent from my number. Short things. One was just a question mark. One said, "You there?" Another simply, "Still awake?" All sent to that same unknown number. No responses. The worst part, I couldn't say with certainty that I hadn't written them. Sleep had become erratic. I'd wake up in different positions, on the couch, in the hallway, once sitting on the floor in the kitchen, legs numb, head aching. Always with the same sense of displacement, like time had been skipped. My dreams were silent, or else forgotten completely the moment I woke. I started using sleep tracking apps, hoping for proof for patterns. The results were useless. Hours missing from the record entirely. Some mornings, I'd find the bedsheet had slipped from the mirror. Each time, I told myself it must have been gravity, the way old cloth doesn't hold grip for long. But it was always just enough removed to reveal my face. And every time, I was smiling in the reflection. One evening, desperate to distract myself, I began organizing drawers. Something menial, tactile. My nightstand was cluttered with the usual scraps of a solitary life. Batteries, receipts, a broken watch. Underneath it all, I found a photograph. A Polaroid, faded around the edges, the kind you'd find in a thrift store photo album. But this one was unmistakably of me, standing at the edge of a lake. But I'd never been to that lake. The water behind me stretched wide and still, bordered by trees that curved like they were leaning in. The light in the photo was strange, too blue, too soft. I looked younger, happier. My hair was a little longer, and I was wearing a coat, I didn't own. But it was me. That was my face. I turned the photo over. Blank. No date, no handwriting. Just old paper. Back in the bathroom, my phone in hand, I aimed the camera at the photo and opened the mirrored preview mode. The photo changed. Still the same lake, still the same trees. But now, there were two of me. One stood by the water's edge, the same smile, the same unfamiliar coat. The second figure stood just behind, half in shadow. Same face, same features, but the expression cold. Eyebrows knit, lips pressed tight. One smiled, one scowled. I nearly dropped the phone. When I looked at the physical photo again, the second figure was gone, as if it had only ever existed in the reflection. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mirror, even covered, felt loud somehow, like it was pressing against the room's silence. The apartment had grown stiller in the past weeks. Less sound from the neighbors, less noise from the street. Everything felt slowed. At some point, I must have dozed off, but I woke again. Not in bed. I was standing, feet cold against tile. The bathroom. I don't remember getting there. The overhead light was off. The only illumination came from the moon, seeping through the small frosted window above the tub. The bedsheet was gone. The mirror was exposed, slightly fogged. My own breath clouded the air. There was something written in the condensation, letters traced carefully with a fingertip. From the inside, "You're starting to forget, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't move, just stare at my own reflection. It didn't stare back. It watched. After the message appeared in the condensation, I stopped sleeping properly. I'd lie down, eyes open for hours, heart hammering without cause. Then suddenly I'd wake up, on the floor, slumped against the wall, once even curled up in the empty tub, cold and shivering. It didn't matter how tightly I tried to stay conscious. Something inside me was slipping. So I set up a camera. It was just my phone at first, balanced on a stack of books across the room, pointed directly at the bed. I installed a motion-activated app that would start recording if anything moved. I didn't expect to see anything. Maybe just me turning over. Maybe evidence that I was sleepwalking. That would have been a comfort. Instead, I found a routine. Every night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I got out of bed. No tossing. No signs of restlessness. Just a still body that suddenly sat upright, stood, and walked toward the bathroom. In every video, I vanished just as I stepped out of the bedroom frame. When I checked the next motion capture, a few minutes later, it would show me standing back in the same spot, unmoving, just watching the bed. Sometimes for 20 seconds. Sometimes for a full minute. Then I'd return, lie down, and stay motionless until morning. It wasn't a gradual thing. It was as though someone had flipped a switch inside my body. Awake, then gone. Back again, perfectly still. I didn't recognize myself in the footage. Not just in behavior, but in posture. The way I moved. Like I was wearing my own skin, but slightly wrong. I placed a second camera outside the bathroom door, just to see where I went. But the next night, at 3:17, I disappeared again. Right as I reached the bathroom threshold, the feed glitched, just for a second, maybe two. Then nothing. Just an empty hallway. When I reappeared on the camera, I was staring at the mirror. Not reflected in it. Facing it. Eyes fixed. Breath steady. The mirror fogged slightly, though the lights were off. The condensation formed slowly, impossibly, like something alive was breathing on the other side. I covered the mirror again after that, but it didn't help. The reflections were everywhere. At work, the window by my desk looked into the neighboring building. During the day, sunlight reflected faint images on the glass. At first, I avoided looking, but one afternoon, I caught a glimpse without meaning to. My reflection was looking back, but not at me. It stared through me. Its eyes looked sunken, tired, not malicious, just afraid. The more I caught it, the more it changed. Sometimes it wouldn't match my movements at all. It would lag behind by a few seconds, like it was reacting slowly or unwillingly. At one point, it turned its head towards something behind it, something I couldn't see, then looked at me with a sadness that felt intimate. I began avoiding all reflective surfaces. My phone screen, car windows, puddles. But the world is a maze of mirrors once you start looking for them. Coworkers noticed. They'd ask questions. Something about how pale I looked, about my memory lapses, things I swore I hadn't said in meetings, tasks I had no recollection of completing. One of them said I was acting different, colder, like I was barely present. I didn't correct them. I wasn't sure they were wrong. That Friday, a package arrived at my door. No name, no return address, just a plain envelope, padded but unmarked. I opened it with a knife, hands trembling for no good reason. Inside was a single Polaroid, faded at the edges, grainy, but clear enough to recognize. It was a photo of me, or rather, my reflection. The face in the mirror was screaming, mouth stretched open, eyes wide in terror. Not like a stage scream. It looked real, desperate, like the person inside was watching something horrific unfold and was helpless to stop it. Behind the photo, scrawled on the backing in shaky, almost frantic handwriting, were 5 words. He remembers what you did. I dropped the Polaroid. It fluttered to the floor face down, but I didn't dare flip it again. My thoughts raced, my breath quickening until I felt dizzy. Something had crossed the line. This wasn't sleepwalking. This wasn't imagination. Someone, or something, knew me, knew things I didn't remember. The mirror had become unbearable. I waited until nightfall. The apartment was silent, cloaked in the hush that only comes after midnight. I stood in front of the mirror for the first time in days. The bedsheet had been torn down again. I hadn't done it. I stared into the glass. My face looked haggard, the skin under my eyes bruised with exhaustion. I lifted my arm, slowly. The reflection followed. Perfectly. I didn't trust it. My heart pounded in my throat as I grabbed the nearest object with weight, an old cast iron paperweight from my desk. I hesitated for only a second. Then I swung. The impact was a thundercrack in the quiet. Glass shattered outward in an explosion of glittering fragments. The mirror cracked, split, fractured like spiderwebs spreading across ice. But before it broke completely, just before the surface gave way, I saw it. Not my reflection. Not exactly. It was me, but different. Reaching, hand pressed against the other side of the glass. Mouth open, eyes wide. Not in anger. In plea. Then the mirror gave out. Pieces rained to the floor, sharp and humming with tension. I staggered back, a shard caught in my palm, blood trickling down to the wrist. The wall behind the mirror was blank. No hidden panels. No windows. Just drywall. But the air tasted different, like something had been let out, or let in. After the mirror shattered, I expected silence. I thought I'd killed it, whatever it was. The haunting, the presence, the version of myself I couldn't explain. But the glass was just a door. Breaking it didn't close anything. It opened something else. Things got worse. I started waking up with no idea where I'd been. Not just the familiar fog of sleep or the slow crawl out of dreams, but whole hours lost. Gaps in time that stretched like missing teeth in my memory. One morning, I woke on the couch fully dressed, shoes caked in dried mud. My jacket reeked of wood smoke. My phone battery was dead, and my knuckles were scraped raw. In the kitchen sink, a single black leaf floated in a cup of water. I don't own any plants. I found receipts later that day, tucked in my wallet. Gas station stops 2 towns over. A diner at 4:23 a.m. A convenience store at midnight with a timestamp from a day I don't recall. Each one had my signature, neat, slanted, and identical to mine. Then came the photographs. They were hidden in my phone's camera roll, tucked between mundane shots of grocery lists and unread book pages. Images I hadn't taken. One was a forest trail, wet, mist clinging low over the leaves. Another showed a motel door, the numbers slightly blurred. A third, the inside of my apartment, taken from a low angle, as if the camera had been placed on the floor, peering up at me sleeping in the bed. In each picture, the lighting was wrong, too dim or too bright. The angles always just slightly off, unsettling. Like the person taking them didn't fully understand what the lens was for. I didn't remember any of it. The rational part of me wanted to believe I was sleepwalking again. Maybe I'd fallen into a dissociative state, brought on by stress and insomnia. Maybe I was having episodes. I even Googled fugue states and adult-onset epilepsy, desperate to make the pieces fit something clinical. But the evidence didn't support sanity. I stopped going to work, locked myself inside the apartment, piled furniture against the bathroom door, as if blocking the room might help. It didn't. I kept finding things out of place. Shoes lined up neatly by the door when I remembered kicking them off mid-hallway. Lamps turned just slightly, enough to shift their shadows across the walls. I'd fall asleep on the couch and wake in bed, or vice versa. My phone would move. My books would be stacked in the shape of things, triangles, spirals, crude outlines of faces. I began to suspect I wasn't alone, not just in the sense of an intruder, but something deeper, like a second presence was living in the same space, using the same body, one that moved through my life without permission. It was in the closet that I found the journal. The floorboards near the back had always creaked louder than the rest. That day, a corner popped loose beneath my heel. Inside, wrapped in a sheet of yellowed newspaper, was a notebook, leather-bound, old but preserved. When I opened it, my breath caught. The handwriting was mine, but the memories weren't. The first entries were simple, observational, notes on days that didn't exist, mentions of people I've never met, places I've never been. Then came a shift. The tone grew colder, more urgent. The writer described being trapped behind glass, beneath water, inside a reflection, watching his life be taken. He wrote about me, not by name, but in clear detail. He described my routines, my habits, my apartment, my job. He wrote about how I walked, how I slept, how I mumbled to myself when I was tired. Every word dripped with resentment. There were pages where the ink looked smeared, like someone had pressed their thumb across sentences mid-writing. Some lines were scratched out violently. On one page, just 3 lines. He doesn't know he stole me. He thinks he's real, but I'm the one who remembers. The journal claimed that the mirror wasn't just a surface. It was a prison. That the person I'd been seeing, the so-called reflection, had once been real. That he had once stood in this world, looking at me from the other side. And then I'd taken his place. Whether willingly or not, he said, I was living a life that wasn't mine. That the mirror had chosen. That something ancient and old, something beyond comprehension, had given me the body, the world, the identity. But not the soul. That had stayed behind. He said he watched every moment. Watch me laugh, eat, live. He called it torment. He said the moment the mirror shattered, the divide cracked with it. He was coming back. I closed the journal and buried it deep under my bed. But the words wouldn't leave me. If I wasn't real, what was I? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tried staying awake, pacing the apartment, keeping every light on. But my limbs betrayed me. My eyes closed without permission. The world blurred. When I opened them again, hours had passed. I checked the camera. It had recorded. I watched the video in a fog. Same as before, me, rising from the bed at 3:17, and moving with slow, deliberate steps toward the bathroom door. But this time, something was different. As I passed the edge of the frame, my head turned. Not toward the mirror, not toward the hallway, toward the camera. And I spoke, mouth barely moving, just enough to form the words. This is the last night you'll remember being you. Then I smiled, but I wasn't smiling. I was still watching. It was a glass of water that gave it away. Morning light leaked through the blinds, soft and cold. My apartment looked normal at first. Quiet. Still. But when I reached for the glass on the nightstand, it felt off. Not the glass, my hand. My left hand, clumsy and uncertain, took it easily. Too easily. I was right-handed. Always had been. The realization settled slowly, like silt in a lake bed. I stood, and everything wavered. The room was reversed. The light switch was on the wrong side of the door. The posters on my wall faced the opposite direction. Text on my calendar, backward. In the bathroom, the faucet handles were switched. Cold where hot should be. Left was right. Right was left. I tested the keyboard at my desk. Fingers stumbling, muscle memory failing. My dominant hand no longer felt dominant. The apartment looked identical, but it was all mirrored, as if the walls had been rebuilt backward, down to every detail, every imperfection. Even the scar on my forearm, one I'd had since childhood, had moved sides. My phone vibrated on the table, flashing awake with a single notification. I unlocked it. The icons were reversed. The text flipped. Every message I typed came out mirrored. each letter forming its reflection. I tried calling someone, anyone, but the line clicked once, then went silent. No response. No the tone. Just static, faint, and distant. While I looked up, I caught my reflection in the screen. He was smiling. Not the strained, uncertain expression I wore. His smile was relaxed, confident, at ease. He looked rested, whole. He looked like me, but more alive. I moved my hand. He matched the gesture, fluid, smooth. But there was a delay, a hesitation, then something extra, a tilt of the head I hadn't done, a narrowing of the eyes. A performance, maybe, or confirmation. He wasn't mimicking anymore. He was watching. The gravity of it all collapsed inward. I wasn't in my apartment. Not really. I was in his. The reflections world. The one behind the glass. He'd crossed over, and I had taken his place. No, not taken. Been pulled. Swapped. I stumbled through the reverse space, checking every surface, every window, every mirrored item. All the reflections behaved as they should. Perfect sync. Nothing out of place. Until I reached the bedroom again. There was a mirror. A full-length one, tall and narrow, leaning against the far wall like it had always been there. I didn't remember owning it. I stepped close. My breath fogged the surface. On the other side, there he was. My face, but not my expression. He looked concerned at first, then surprised, then satisfied. I raised my hand. He didn't mirror it. Instead, he touched the glass from his side. His fingers left no fog, no smudge. Just a soft tap I felt in my bones. I shouted, screamed, begged, but no sound passed through. He watched me. I slammed my hand against the mirror. He flinched, but only slightly. Not in fear, in pity. He leaned closer, eyes locked with mine, and mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't have to. I knew. He turned, slowly, looked behind him toward my apartment, my real apartment, and walked out of frame. Calm, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. And I was left behind. This world, his world, is quiet, dimmer. Everything moves just slightly slower, like it's underwater. There's no wind through the windows, no sound of neighbors, no buzz of distant traffic, just stillness and the faint hum of the mirror. I try to break it, of course. Hurl chairs, books, my fists. But it doesn't crack. It doesn't even ripple. It watches like it's enjoying the show. Sometimes I think I see others inside it. Faces pressed to the other side, lips moving silently, eyes wide and desperate. Brief flashes, gone before I can blink. I'm writing this from a desk that's mine, but reversed. The journal I found in the floorboards, it's here too. Same leather, same smudged ink. Only now it's filled with names I don't recognize. Pages upon pages of other lives. Other people, each one telling a different version of the same story. Each one warning the next. I'm leaving this here in case someone finds it. Not in this place. I don't think anyone will. But maybe, just maybe, the mirror works both ways. Maybe, wherever you are, you'll glance up from this page and look at your reflection. Really look, not just the surface. Look into the eyes. Watch the timing of your blink, the way your hand moves, the tension behind the smile. And if something feels off, if your reflection doesn't quite match, don't ignore it, because someone's already watching, and he remembers something you've forgotten.